Donald, thanks so much for being here on the show. You are a former law enforcement officer, have conducted no-knock warrants yourself. I want to start first with what it is and what type of preparation goes into a warrant like this.
Really good question, because people think that the cops just walk up to any door and just kick it in without knocking. That's not the case. There's usually a great deal of surveillance that goes into these type of no-knock warrants. Usually we know exactly who's in there. We know whether or not they're truly dangerous. We know what kind of weapons they have. And it usually involves the use of either informants or officers that are undercover to get this information. There's usually a staging area, and it's highly regulated. You know, contrary to this video, no-knock warrants save lives, and they also prevent the destruction of evidence. Yes, there's some incidents that have gone bad, but none of these claims that they're making are backed by statistics. I can tell you what is on the department, these things save officers' lives, and frequently they save lives of people that are in the dwellings, especially in SWAT situations.
In watching the video, which I'm sure you've seen, do you feel like something went wrong, or do you feel like they followed protocol? It's hard to say because you don't know exactly what happened before. That's what the investigation is going to be like. But what were your initial thoughts when watching the video?
Well, yeah, I saw it as a very unfortunate accident. You know, police work is very dangerous, and people that are involved in police incidents that are around what they do sometimes do get hurt, you know, but I don't think that it speaks of all of the incidents that go on almost every day throughout this nation where officers have to go through front doors. Front door is a very dangerous place. I mean, cops get shot there, and people get shot, you know, when they're being held hostage. You know, officers need a surprise element. There needs to be still a crisis entry. Yes, you could regulate it, you could limit it, but never think about getting away with it or taking this off the menu for police officers. They have to be able to do this in dangerous situations.
So you're saying that this is critical for these teams, these SWAT teams per se, to utilize the no-knock warrants to be ahead of the person or the persons inside. So what do you think, if it is taken off the table, if it is banned out in Minneapolis and Minnesota, nationwide, how critical is it for those teams, and how different will it look for search warrants?
Yeah, Daytona, who's going to want to go through the front door? Who's going to want to be the key person, knowing that there's somebody with a gun standing behind there? You're going to knock, give them a notice that you're coming in there so they could shoot you. You know, it just makes the job so much more hazardous, and it makes it impossible in critical situations. So, you know, it just doesn't make sense. You know, I've been through that front door. I was involved in an incident where, fortunately, I didn't get shot in the face because the search warrant was called off. But the guy who picked up the key the next day, serving the same search warrant, got shot in the face. I can tell you, it's traumatic, and it's very dangerous to make entry into these places.
So, by the way, I'm sorry about that. I know that's a traumatic situation, and there's definitely two sides to this story right now. We're seeing violence against first responders, police officers, just rampant right now in cities across the country. And so utilizing things like this to protect themselves, I know, has been huge for officers in the past. So if you could just expand a little bit more on the no-knock warrants, how they are supposed to be initiated, and where possibly this could have gone wrong. And then with that, there's going to be a legal battle ahead. So the possible case for these officers who did come in and did end up shooting Amir Locke.
Well, you know, if you enter a dwelling and somebody is making furtive movements, I mean, that puts the officers in danger, and it puts the person. And unfortunately, there are circumstances where people are going to be shot, you know, that, you know, are innocent. You know, it rarely happens. That's why I say that the defense attorney that was on TV that's talking about how these things are chaotic and they're destroying lives the no-knock warrants are just horrific across the nation. There's no statistics that support that. It's very rare that there are accidents. They do happen. There are mistakes. And, if you go into this particular situation, which I'm not intimately familiar with, but you could just look and see that there was a mistake made. It wasn't an intentional killing. And statistically speaking, I would challenge the attorney that says that this happens a lot, because it doesn't.
What do you see as next steps in the future for best practices for no-knock warrants, or the possibility of not having no-knock warrants? How do you think this is going to affect departments moving forward?
Yeah, Daytona, always better training. Officers could always use better training, and there could always be better regulations and management. In my day when I was on the street, we would go into homes with no knocks because we were looking to prevent people from destroying evidence. Typically, that was drugs that were being flushed down in a toilet. It'd be a race to the toilet, right? And you come in there and there'd be marijuana leaves floating on top and stuff. Those days really those things don't have to happen anymore because of the decriminalization of drugs. I don't think officers are now chasing after people as much as they did before like that. And you can't destroy large quantities of drugs. You really can't destroy guns and things like that. So it could be regulated more. We don't need to do it probably as much as we did in the 80s when we were in that drug war, and there was no, drug courts or anything like that.
Right. Also important to note for people who are not familiar with the Amir Locke case, he was not a part of the search warrant. He was inside of this room, which the search warrant was a part of. He was unaffiliated with the homicide investigation that they were looking into. And so there is a lot of anger and frustration on the opposite side of things, in which the family has gotten representation to move forward and calling on the officers to step down. What is your response to that? Step down or be fired?
Well, I don't think that that's warranted. Like I said, it's an occupational mistake. From what I understand, again, I'm not intimately familiar with it, but there were furtive movements. This man was on the couch. Officers have to make decisions split second. If they're in there on a no-knock warrant, that means that somebody believed that it was very, very dangerous walking in there, and it just happened to be this case. A lot of times officers have to have a perimeter around a place and call people out. That's that's what's necessary a lot of times to avoid these type of situations. Again, I'm not intimately familiar with it, but it's not beyond, reason to think that there could have been an accident based upon a split-second decision.
Yeah. The St. Paul Police Department originally filed for a standard search warrant, not utilizing the no-knock warrant. And then the Minneapolis Police Department overruled that and said that we don't want to do it unless it is a no-knock warrant. So they moved forward with the no-knock warrant. They're also facing a little bit of scrutiny by the way that they came into the room. They say that the officers kicked the couch, which then they say startled Amir Locke, and they say anyone in their right mind would be startled from waking up in that way, and that it was almost initiated by these officers.
Look, once they're making an entry, they're going to be rough when they go in there. They're going to be bumping into things. They're not going to be really nice guys or gals coming in there, because it's the element of surprise, and it's also to shock people, to paralyze them basically, so they can be arrested and not do something dangerous. That's done intentionally. But I think really what needs to be discussed is that there should be a debate, a discussion ahead of time as to whether or not it's necessary. I was involved in some of those debates when I was a police officer. Going into places, do we need to go in an aggressive way, or should we just set up a perimeter around and pull people out, especially when there's small children that are in there, people that are innocent. But that's a case-by-case thing. And like I said, officers could be trained better, departments could be highly regulated, but never get away with it, because then you're not going to have the ability of going in and rescuing people, the way that our SWAT teams do.
Right. Last question for you, Donald. Thank you so much for explaining this and breaking it down, because people like myself have no idea what it's like to initiate a search warrant and be confronted with environments like you have. So my last question for you is, what is a split-second decision? What is that like, being on the opposite side of things and heading into an environment that you're not sure what it's going to be like? Just share that with people who are watching right now.
Things slow down. You know, your breathing gets heavy, your heart's pounding in your chest. You're still maintaining control because of your training and experience. You haven't stopped thinking, but you're really relying on your training and experience to make that split-second decision. Officers are a lot like professional athletes, where once they get into the heat of a moment, it's their training and their experience that kicks in, and it's reflective. So if somebody's coming in and they see furtive movements and it looks to them like in that split second that they're in danger, they're just thinking about survival at that point. And that's why I say is that there can be accidents in these situations. Most likely that's what happened here.
All right. Donald Schweitzer, thank you so much for joining us here on the show and sharing your experiences in dealing with similar situations to this, or the exact situations. It's really great to be exposed to all parts, because this case is going to be moving forward.
Yes. Thank you, Dakota.
Okay. Thank you so much.